Hello once again. Welcome to Herd Immunity News. I'm Marcus Botzer. Today, it gives me great pleasure to welcome back onto our platform Mr. Nick Tenconi, who is the leader of the United Kingdom Independence Party. This man is really gaining a lot of ground on social media, having just spoken at an incredible rally in London not so long ago. We're going to speak to him about a plethora of subjects tonight, and there will be no holds barred. Nick doesn't know what I'm going to ask him, and there are very few politicians in this country that could put up to such scrutiny. But without further ado, let me say, Nick, how are you, sir?
Fine, fine fiddle. Thanks very much for having me back on, mate. It's lovely to be here.
Well, before we get into the questions and everything, might I just make a comment and say congratulations on the speech that you gave during the rally that I touched on. What's been the feedback since you addressed the crowds of tens of thousands of British patriots?
It's been as forecasted. So 90% are very, very grateful. That's actually what I forecasted the 90% of the feed, but 95% is they're grateful. The British people have been betrayed over and over again for decades by the establishment that makes up approximately three parties with a little bit of influence from some nonsense far left stuff. They have been betrayed over and over again for decades. We have been left destitute. We have been left hopeless. What they deserve as a bare minimum at this stage, as we take back our country, is hope. And that was what my speech at the United Kingdom rally was all about, in no uncertain terms. So we have to understand, and for your viewers, well, what does that hope look like in the context of what we're talking about and the political landscape and taking our country back in Britain? It means putting someone forward who is ready, willing, and able to demonstrate that they have the inner resource and the inner resolve to commit to the project of taking back Britain, because power won't be given to us. It won't be given. It won't be shared with us. We have to take it back. And in order to do that, you're going to need somebody and a team and an entity with its missions and manifesto, etc., that demonstrably will do that. We are out of time. There is no time left whatsoever. So the 5% remaining in terms of feedback were slightly put off by how passionate, being kind with that word. I won't actually relay what that 5% have said, but it is my job to, for those of you who are going to watch this, is to remind people that they deserve better. They deserve fearless leadership, and they deserve somebody who's willing to give it absolutely all to this cause. So any concerns in that 5% camp, they're disappointing, but also to be expected. Slightly too passionate, and I'm being a bit kind with that word, but that's absolutely fine because I'm not here to please everyone. We're not a broad church outfit, and I'm not a broad church guy. So
No, overall, the feedback that we've had onto our platform here at Herd Immunity News has been very, very positive. Obviously, no matter who you are, you're always going to get criticism from this quarter or that quarter. The leftist commentariat is really that there's no point with a lot of them, sadly. But if we're looking at Conservative voters, Reform voters, and a lot of dissident Labour supporters, they are very interested. And there can be nothing better for a party leader, in our view, is to stand up amongst his fellow British of every colour, every creed, and to say it like it is, and with sounding like a human being who's in touch with them. But so congratulations on that. Please take it the right way, sir. Take it the right
thank
way.
you, thank you.
The first thing, obviously, that we have to speak with you about is the election of Donald J. Trump as the 47th President of the United States of America. Where were you on the night, and what are your overall views of President Trump returning to the White House?
I was invited to an election watch night party, and that didn't quite work. That didn't quite work out. So I was present and correct to observe, as long as I could stay awake, bearing in mind my day the next day. And look, what is there to say other than finally we got a little bit of hope. We got a fantastic result. We got some fantastic news, and we got a little bit of hope reinstilled once again that it is possible that we can, Europe, the US, we can solve this mess that the establishment is the main most directly responsible for. So when I personally knew what was what by 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock on Wednesday morning, all I can liken it to is the excitement and the joy and the inner happiness you feel on Christmas morning, for example. Certainly that's for me. I can't speak for everyone, but certainly for me, that hasn't changed ever, not once. It is super, there's a specialness to it, which you'd liken to that of deep hope and inner joy. And I know that conservatives around the world felt that. So absolutely fantastic result. I didn't know whether it was going to happen or not. I'll be very honest with you. I didn't know. And it's been, let's face it, it's a bit of a whitewash. It's a bit of a landslide. So the people, most important though, linking to the question, people keep saying they think the tide is turning. And it's very easy to be desolate in your mind with regards to how we get out of this. People aren't stupid. People know what they've got to do. And it's just that if it gets so bad, there's something about our species whereby when it gets so bad, we then do something about it. History keeps repeating itself over and over again. It's very much the pathway of the end of days and last days of Rome as well. So the truth is, in Britain, as bad as we've got it, the truth is it's not as bad as America or Europe. So again, speaking as an individual and on behalf of UKIP, we don't want it to get to that. Surely we don't want to get it to that finality, to that utterly awful place. We don't want to do that. We need to act now. We need real political change now.
Absolutely. And last time you were on, you came up with a fantastic soundbite, although it's the truth, and you spoke the truth, and you said UKIP is the party of mass deportations. Now already President Trump has the left howling like the banshees they are, because he's talking about mass deportations. He has installed a fantastic Border Patrol czar, Mr. Tom Homan, and they're talking about 23 million people out with the country. So surely you must be delighted to hear that the leader of the Free West is backing up your party principles of mass deportation.
Absolutely. And were Trump to get in, I was expecting nothing less. So we know what's what, and we knew what to expect. I think there's a couple of really important points to this. I've seen Tom's speech, and it's great, and it's very inspiring. But also, we're not the US, and as we talk about the special relationship, and everything trickles down from the US, certainly culturally. Well, yeah, that may well be true, but we are a completely separate entity, and the America First movement is putting America first, and it is a powerful movement. It is an extension or an acceleration or byproduct of MAGA, obviously, which is great. It's literally what we're trying to do with UKIP in Britain, but we are very separate. And if Trump succeeds and issues the huge number of mass deportations, obviously this is fantastic news and it's very inspiring, but we need to do it here. So their number might be 23 million. We've identified 5 million. In terms of policy, we've identified a suspected 5 million that don't deserve to be here. Whereas America has problems with weapons and with lots of other things as well. America is far away from the Middle East, and it's far away from radical Islam in comparison with Europe and how we are plagued by radical Islam in Britain and in Europe as well. So it's fantastic news. Again, going back to Tuesday night's result, it makes us feel an awful lot better about things. But again, some salient points for your audience. He's also very, very close with Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage of Reform has said no to mass deportations. Does Donald Trump know that? I mean, let's put the pause button on here. Does Donald Trump know that? I find this hugely problematic. I really do. You need a mainstream political party who is saying, this is who we're going to deport. This is why we're going to deport them. And that's the end of that. And Reform simply aren't saying that. They've said no, that it isn't possible. It's madness. Europe can do it. America can do it. So can we. So here's another slogan for you. Detentions, deportations, remigration. We're sending them home.
Well, absolutely. And it's interesting that you mention reform and Nigel's stance on it. And people have said to me within the Reform Party, who shall remain nameless right now, because they want to, they've said that they're keeping their powder dry. However, there is a break in the ranks here with Mr. Rupert Lowe, who has come out and quite boldly said, echoed your sentiments and that of President Donald Trump. We can debate about which order he's following. But he certainly is echoing your statements, and it is kind of going against what Nigel and Richard Tice is saying. Did you notice anything that Rupert had made these comments?
Yeah, I did. I mean, the dissension within reform is across the board. We're inundated with ex-reformers, whether they were supporters, subscribers, chairmans. They've been axed. I don't know what reform. I don't know what they're doing. I mean that literally, and also I mean it in the way of a slur. I don't know what they think that they're doing, or other than, again, they are just concerned with their membership base. They're just concerned with saying we've got 90,000 members, we've got 95,000 members, now we've got 95.5, now we've got 100. That they seem to be only concerned with that. So I advise people to check out the tweets of high command, check out the tweets of the VIPs at Reform. They have nothing to say. It's all outrage, or it's something that they can politicize or get their hands on, or it's about democratization, or it's about professionalization, or it's about how many people attended one of their branch meetings. Like to do Conservative Party 2.0 is worth anything. We need a new style of politics. We need a new form of politics. We're done with the politics of old. UKIP is specializing and leading the charge in this regard. So I advise people to check out Reform's Twitter timeline and tell me if you're inspired. And going to Rupert, the dissension there. Also, Alex Phillips as well, around the incarceration of Tommy Robinson. And there were a few other people as well. I forget the other chap's name, but it'll come back to me. It seems like a very split camp. It very much seems everyone wants what UKIP's high command and what UKIP's policies, its missions, and its manifesto is saying. But there's that huge chunk that's in the Reform camp, and they're hanging in there with the Reform because they've given so much time. It's a mixture of cognitive dissonance with Stockholm syndrome. I don't know what it is, but the other half of Reform are potentially your classic Tory liberal voter, and you've also got Mohammed as their chairman as well. So how are you going to, again, the question remains frustratingly so, how are you going to deal with today's issues and the really uncomfortable conversations we've got to have? So you're going to see a more splintered, fractured camp within Reform. So in terms of the political commentary, I can do that all day long, but the reality is that every Kemi's appointment within the Tories, Reform's continual dereliction of duty with regard to what the British people need and deserve. This is something that is forecasted by myself over and over again. They're the gift that keep on giving. And I'd like to add to that. Let's say in 6 months' time, they flip-flop and they turn around and they say yes to mass deportations. What's the plan, Marcus? Is everybody in the Reform camp and anyone who's thinking about Reform going to go, great, brilliant, we finally got what we wanted? We've been betrayed by the establishment for decades. Why is it I can say it, but Nigel can't say it? Are we going to forgive not a Reform and high command at Reform if they flip-flop and say in 6 months' time that mass deportations is back on and remigration? Are we going to forgive that? Is that acceptable? I don't understand how anyone can say that that's okay to do. We're in crisis.
Well, it puts Nigel in a very difficult position, the election of Donald Trump, because he has a mandate, a clear mandate from the American people. He has the House, he has the Senate, he won the popular vote, and he's all the swing states, the 7 key swing states. He wiped the board despite all the novel legacy MSS, multimedia bullshit that were given, that it was neck and neck, wasn't it? It was like Hillary Clinton all over again. Trump's going to be trounced and all this rubbish. But Nigel is now in the insidious position that his best friend and hero is talking about the biggest mass deportations exercise in world history. And Donald J. Trump, God bless him, is sounding more like Nick Tenconi than he is Nigel Farage. So there will be, you think it'll be 6 months and he'll do a U-turn?
Yeah, this is exactly what I'm saying. From a commentary perspective, I'd see in the next my next four my all my forecasts have come to fruition, and I put my name to it. In 6 months'
Hmm.
time, we may well see reform flip flop. And what I'm saying is we should all be ready for that. And I think that it's totally unacceptable. I think it's totally unacceptable. Why on earth would you not be saying what everyone wants to hear? It's because they're waiting. They're wait. You said earlier on about they're keeping their powder dry. I've heard it a million times about the long game. I'm so confused. So if this is true, that means that at best, entities like Reform and at Reform's top table, at best they are deceiving.
Hmm.
At best, they are deceiving. Why would you ever hold back in a race where your demise is just around the corner and no one wants to bring children into modern Britain? Why would you wait?
Yeah.
You're waiting to be greenlit, aren't you? You're waiting for something in your pipeline, in your roadmap, or in your vision. You're waiting for something to greenlight you. But we don't want leaders who are waiting. We don't want leaders who are cucked. We don't want leaders who are afraid. The politics of cowardice and fear and not wishing to upset the apple cart. We've choked on this for decades to the point where you've got diversity, inclusion, equality. You've got critical race theory. You've got economic, social governance, ESG. You've got Black Lives Matter. You've got the rise of Islamism. You've got the rise of communism, the legitimization, the facilitation. You've got it all based on the fact that you don't really want to upset anyone, and also you're terrified. So what precedent does this take, to your point about in 6 months' time, if he does get, it's not about getting wise to it. If he decides to flip flop or Reform does that, how my forecast is that people could potentially fall for it and go, yeah, okay, well, that sounds good. Now, the end goal is something we all want to achieve for Britain and for our children and our children's children. So it doesn't matter if I or UKIP are the stimuli for that change. Again, every point that you make about reform could be made for the Conservative Party also. So if we get the result, great. That's what I'm in it for, and that's what UKIP is in it for. But we have been betrayed over and over again. So at what point do people say enough's enough? I'm backing a party that's saying it and doing it as well. The operation is deportation.
Wow, there's so much in there. Thank you for sharing those thoughts and to go over some of what you've just said. The Reform will be in an impossible situation because Trump has come straight out the traps with his policies. He's not hanging about because there is no time to hang about. We've hung about for too long. Mass immigration we've had over the last 15 to 20 years. The population of the United Kingdom has gone up by 10 million. Now we talk about illegals all the time. That's bad enough because these people are completely unfettered. We don't know who the hell they are, and each one costs us £60,000, 45 to £60,000, or 5 to 6 billion a year. It's just money we do not have. In fact, we're borrowing that money. But what Trump is talking about is obviously working from the prisoners that are here first, then the people on the watch lists, and then it will just be over to people in aircraft carriers or planes taking them back. Is that the same sort of mechanism that you would envisage for UKIP, were you to take office?
Sure. So it would be done. The way that I'm explaining to people is there's three main phases. So phase one is anything that can be detained and deported very easily. So it's your low hanging fruit and justifiably so as well. And it's far less complex than some of the other areas. So your 10,000, give or take an inch, foreign nationals in our prisons. Obviously, they're already detained, they're deported. The 100,000 in our hotels, they're already detained, they're deported. So we're talking about an operation that would be done and dealt with, let's say, for example, inside of 6 months. We need to return results to the British public that have put their faith and trust in us. So we deploy the military to remove the foreign nationals in our prison and in the illegal invaders in our hotels. You've also got the 1.2 million. This is phase one, phase two. Sure. You've also got the 1.2 million migrants who are currently claiming welfare in Britain. If you're here on a visa, how in what world are you able to claim welfare? How is this possible? You are removed. You are gone. You are sent home. You're sent home. You're on a visa. You're sent home. Now we've got the unintegrated communities and those who refuse to assimilate. Now, unintegrated communities are very easy to find. That's why it's called an unintegrated community. And I want to talk to you about exactly what that looks like and how would you define that. Those who refuse to assimilate is a bit easier to explain, but potentially more complicated as well. So let's be very clear. Low-hanging fruit, MI5's terror watch list, 45,000, 39,000 are considered to be on a or part of a radical Islamist organization or have malintent towards our Christian brothers and sisters and to ordinary UK citizens. So that's why we say detention, deportation, remigration. So in the case of the 39,000, they would be detained indefinitely. So I can't be clearer than that. It's under 120 seconds. That's the low hanging fruit. Let's say that operation was complete within under a year, for example, although I doubt very much it would take that long. Then we go to unintegrated communities. So take your Hare Hills, for example. Take your Alum Rock in Birmingham, for example. Take your Whitechapel, for example. There are countless pockets of entities whereby if we were to put our British charter, which we have at UKIP, in front of those people, arguably they would not pass the test. So it's things like, can you speak English? Do you decree and declare that this is a Christian land? Do you decree and declare that you believe in free speech and the rule of law, for example? So there's going to be some very basic points on there. And there's no different from airport security or border control, where you are assessing someone with regards to what their purpose is in Britain. And if it is anti-Christian, if it is anti-British, if it is anti-democracy, anti-freedom of speech, the rule of law, I don't think this is a Christian land in any way, shape or form. I can't provide you with any evidence of any good that I have brought here to the UK. It won't be isolated incidents. We will find communities like, we already know where they are. And unfortunately, that is, again, where detention, deportation and remigration comes into play. I say unfortunately, I mean unfortunate for them, because I'm 99% sure also as a deterrent, this will mean that people will leave of their own volition as well. So
sorry to interrupt, but Tom Homan, the border czar, Trump's border czar, has talked about you will be deported if you're here illegally. This is dealing with the low-hanging fruit to start with. If you return, you'll be given a 10-year jail sentence without any parole, any chance of early parole. And if you come here and you murder a US citizen, you will receive the death penalty. What are your thoughts about those comments?
So I was watching something earlier. I think it was Tice on Talk TV. Yeah, I think it was. And they were talking about the fact that Nigel didn't get invited, which I don't believe, but okay, fine. We can chat about that if you like. He was defending it. And they brought up about the death penalty. And I can't remember the name of the presenter now, but they both of them sort of chimed in that I don't think they were particularly pro it. But we're going to offer the British public a referendum on the death penalty. So let's be absolutely clear with regard to Trump's policy. I had thought about this and we have discussed it. If, bearing in mind you're talking about detention, deportations, remigration, well, what happens if they try and enter the country again?
Sure.
Which they all do. Yeah, it takes 5 seconds to answer that. If you try and enter it illegally, you'll be detained indefinitely, because that's already set up as well. You'll be detained indefinitely, depending on why you've come back, what your intentions are. Again, there's process here, but you'll be detained. And if you were in the case of the US, I'm not in the least bit surprised to hear they've said that. If you do come back and you found guilty of murder, you'll be executed. Well, they've got the death penalty in many states anyway, if not all of them.
Sure.
So in the UK, without the death penalty, if you come back, if that were possible, and you were to commit murder, obviously under the death penalty, you would be executed. And not under the death penalty, you'd be going to prison for the rest of your natural life.
Yeah,
so well, America are talking sense.
Trump's going to make it federal law.
Yeah, so I mean that's something we'd certainly look at in the UK, but obviously, if you had the death penalty as well.
Absolutely, and it would be an incredible deterrent. Now, a question we haven't asked you: two massive things that are in the news right now are obviously net zero, which we really want to talk to you about and UKIP's policies on that. But without letting you go, off on many, many rabbit holes. My job is to keep you within a couple of minutes on net zero because there's so many other things to talk about. But right now, President Trump is being castigated. There's a surprise by the left-wing legacy media because he wants to withdraw funding to Zelensky and Ukraine. Now, we've never spoken about Ukraine and Britain's involvement. Do you support President Trump's promise that on day one or thereabouts that he will be able to end the special operations between Ukraine and Russia?
I think that yeah, we haven't spoken about Ukraine. I think what I am is I'm bored of Ukraine. I'm really bored of Ukraine, and I'm bored of blank checks as well. So again, what Trump is going to do and what he said he's going to do, yes, it's going to happen. Yes, it's going to come to fruition.
Mm-hmm.
Will that potentially lead to Ukraine falling? Well, but yeah, it might do. But also, Trump's the kind of guy who said that I'm not spending any more money in this direction. Whereas Starmer, and well, I say Starmer, the establishment in Britain is insistent on bankrupting us, not just bankrupt, but further and further and further and further. You know, we are literally witnessing our own destruction year after year, decade after decade. It's as simple as that. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if Trump follows through on what he said. And in terms of my own personal opinion, there's many different ways that you can support leaders and countries who are in war. You can also set boundaries as well. So you might do X for 6 months and Y for a year or whatever. There's all sorts of things that you can do. But in terms of financing that particular scenario that's happening, I think that this is beyond problematic now. And I think Trump's moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I think he is. And with the prospects of the war escalating, Nick, into a nuclear conflict, it always amazes me that these people like Tobias Ellwood, that you see endlessly popping up, 77th Brigadier, that he is, misinformation, disinformation specialist, the man that told us that the Taliban had cleaned up their act and the streets of Afghanistan were now littered and paved with gold, not blood. I mean, absolute trash, absolute nonsense. No, we back him up and support him 100%, and we'd never really asked you about it. But it also goes into what confuses us is how they want war and how they want all these tanks and how they want all these bombs and missiles. But they forget that in the UK, we don't produce steel anymore. I mean, what are your views and UKIP's views on net zero?
We've got to ban it. We've got to scrap it. Agenda 2030, Paris Agreement. But it's worse. I think that I really like it when I'm being interviewed about climate change and about net zero, because we need to get to the heart of the issue. So there's all sorts of agreements and all sorts of articles that we're signed up to and that we have in law or we've supported. Again, there's many different ways to support. Sometimes it's money, sometimes it's signature. The reality is that our youth have been indoctrinated by far left totalitarian propaganda. Now, an awful lot of that is diversity, inclusion, and equality. A lot of it is critical race theory. Obviously, godlessness. You're true. But the green agenda, again, is the slippery snake, like with radical Islam, that just weaves its way into like fourth wave feminism, into the minds of and hearts of our young females. And it's the same with the environment as well. See, in the absence of war, you've got to give people something. You've got a higher purpose. If it's not going to be God, and there's no war, so godlessness and the absence of war, you've got to give them something. So that the teenagers and the university students and the college students, they've all been weaponized. They've all been radicalized to the far left agenda. Now, that typically is, the environment is typically a left topic. Not necessarily. You don't have to be insensitive to it on the right, of course, but common sense approach is different to a radical climate change fantasist, weird, sadistic, sycophant related sort of area. It just beyond it's madness how you could be so easily bought into something that is clearly nonsense. The weather changes. You get over it. Talk about China's pollution. Talk about India's pollution. What are you talking about? You're talking about a form of pathological form of mental illness, and those our youth have, against their will, have been radicalized. So when we talk about net zero, we can talk about scrapping it, ending it. I'm deeply concerned about all the cycle lanes. It makes it so hazardous for drivers. It's so dangerous for drivers. I'm worried about our youth that have been radicalized. I'm worried about what the common man experiences when he drives from A to B. And it's not just net zero, but again, you're driving along the motorway and there's a sign. I've been driving for over 20 years. There's a sign which says, you must monitor your speed to 60 miles an hour for air quality. You know, it's communism right there on a billboard, isn't it? I am telling you, in terms of your neuro programming, I am telling you just how much pressure you can and can't put on the gas because of the benefit of the environment. You know, so when we talk about net zero, we really got to start. You'll hear politicians all the time saying about scrapping it. It's a far left agenda. It's nonsense. Yeah, that's all very well and good, but we need to do better by the British people. The diversity, inclusion, equality, the critical race theory, your Black Lives Matter, your green agenda, all your global agenda, your globalist agenda 2030, all of that is your insidious backdoor stuff to make people, the I Hate Men campaign, fourth wave feminism. It's all part of the same stuff to denigrate citizens, to demoralize, to emasculate, and to corrupt the minds of our youth. And it's got to be called out for the evil that it is. It has to stop.
Absolutely, and you've upped the game and upped the ante on the questioning, but that is a nice segue into what's going on at the moment with the Archbishop of Canterbury and Justin Welby. Now, we hadn't really thought about this, but to ask you questions on this subject, I hope you don't mind addressing it, because you are putting Christianity at front and centre quite proudly, and we stand by you on this, with a Christian platform. Now, obviously, in the news today, this is a massive story. No one can underestimate this, and it would be remiss of me if I didn't put it to you as leader of a political party, Nick, that the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, has been asked to resign and step down in disgrace by the Bishop of Newcastle, Helen Ann Hartley. And this is due to the fact of him allegedly turning a blind eye to the demonic acts of John Smith and his abuse of nearly 100 boys. But we've seen Welby speak out on a plethora of cornucopia, would be more appropriate, a term, on being nicer to migrants, net zero, not having a war, but supporting war in Ukraine. This man really is the antithesis of Christianity. I mean, what are your thoughts on Welby and on the accusations that he turned a blind eye to the abuse of children?
Sure. Well, my thoughts are Welby's a heretic and he's got to go. That's it. So there are certain denominations within Christianity that, no surprise, get denigrated and get shot to pieces over by other tribes, which I think is really bizarre, because we all have the same heart and mind with regards to the central tenets of what the West and what Britain was built on. But that to one side, I'm not gonna do that with regards to the fact that Welby is head of the Anglican Church. Okay, he's a Protestant. So I'm not going to do that, because we shouldn't be doing that. What we should do is we should call evil out, and we should separate the evil from everything else. So what do I think of Welby? I think he's a heretic. I think the guy's an absolute disgrace. I am aware of this story. I'm aware of the cover up. Evil exists, and it is our job to call it out. And it is, I honestly, it's disgusting. I had it yesterday at Remembrance Sunday. I was having a very nice conversation with someone. I will quite literally hide everything about their identity by not even referring to them as male or female. And this conversation happens over and over and again with regards to Christian activism, something that I personally have founded in the UK as well. It's the meek and mild. We are taught forgiveness and solely forgiveness. There's 10 commandments, there's 7 deadly sins, there's 7 sacraments, and there's 2,000 pages in the Bible. And that is all that is repeated over and over again. Forgiveness. Now, listen, of course, as God-fearing men and women, we can say that. We know what we're commanded, but it's not one command. It is not one command. We were not taught to be tolerant of evil. We were not taught to be tolerant of the destruction of innocence and the murdering and the slaying of innocents, etc., etc. So we must call out evil and that which is wrong when we see it. And we should do something about it, regardless of the scale that it's on and regardless of what it was about. We must hold ourselves to a higher account with regards to what we are commanded by. And I say that Welby is unfit. He is not fit. He is unfit to be in the position he's in, and he is not fit for purpose. You mentioned diversity, inclusion, equality. You can mention Black Lives Matter. You can mention any item of the woke agenda. But I'd go as far as to say that he is a heretic. Nothing about it. Again, I'm biased because of my beliefs within my church. But playing a straight bat with it, the story earlier on, it's too much. It's too much to bear. You've got to go. The fact that he's been called out to stand down and resign, I'm quite sure this wouldn't be the first time either. How much more do Christians have to take of their so-called leaders behaving in this manner? It's enough is well and truly enough when it comes to Welby.
Amen to all of that. And there seems to be a proclivity. I don't know if this has occurred to you, Nick, but there seems to be a proclivity towards sexualization of children and the sex lives of children from the radical left, even from the centre, from the likes of the BBC, Hugh Edwards, Jimmy Savile, Rolf Harris, Stuart Hall. You could sit here all day and name the other ones that people don't know about that I'm not going to name here, but they have been charged. And then you have the certain channels having paedophile apologists or paedophile sympathisers come on to their channel. GB News has a female one that we've called out with blonde hair.
Yeah,
I won't name her, but you know who I'm talking about. She's got the double-barreled name.
Yeah.
She was on Patrick Christie's show and she said, don't you find that you have some sympathy towards paedophiles? Now, here's Tommy Robinson. Tommy Robinson, classic case. In the same, almost at exactly the same period when Tommy Robinson is calling out paedophilia amongst certain cohorts in our society, at the same time, BBC presenter Hugh Edwards from the establishment of the BBC is a convicted paedophile for purchasing pictures of young boys being raped, some as young as 7, Nick. And he's free. And to add on to that, he's getting £300,000. I mean, is there systematic paedophilia throughout our establishment in the UK?
Yeah. So to quote from my speech the other day, the establishment is full of perverts, deviants, and paedophiles. Yeah, I'm sick of it. Yeah, I know. I quake with rage. I could spit. When we talk about the establishment, I actually decided to come up with a little list and a little example of what we mean when we talk about the establishment. Because at UKIP, we talk about an awful lot. It means the politics of cowardice. It means the liberal in orientation and nature. It means the tolerant of evil. It means those who are prone to corruption and to gold over, for example, glory, for example. It means the godless. It means the broad church, stand for everything, stand for nothing. The writing is on the wall when it comes to the establishment. Now, you're into the realms now of paedophilia. Listen, how much more do we have to take as a nation before we all understand that best case scenario, they're only concerned with money and they're all corrupt and incompetent and liberal and weak and cowards. At worst, you're into the demonic, satanic, paedophilic. How many more cover-ups? What? And you mentioned you're not gonna say the names. I'm aware of who you're probably talking about. I'm aware of that. And listen, I'd never say anything unless I knew it was the case. But demonstrably, we see establishment figures either getting away with it, engaging in it in the first place, or covered up for, facilitated by. So again, it just goes back to the outrage that we would all have, patriot or not, center, right, left, the outrage we should all have. The establishment facilitates liberalism, godlessness, communism, Islamism. The establishment facilitates, and we've got to take back our country. We can't take any more.
Absolutely to all that. And we have a lot of viewers that are reform voters and members, and there are people who would have been giving you an amazing round of applause, a standing ovation, when you addressed them in London only a couple of weeks ago. We're on Armistice Day today, And obviously we have an olive branch to all of those people on the right, and to Labour patriots as well, and Labour Christians, people who identify as Christians. But the massive clangor of all clangors, we haven't spoken about this, was when Richard Tice, God bless him, was on GB News, and he referred to the collective patriots, men, women, and children, as you lot. Now, I mean, can Richard really not get the message that to piss off your own voters and veterans isn't a great idea? What did you make to those comments?
No, reform's the gift that keeps on giving. So just Richard, if you're watching this, keep going, mate, and tell your buddy Nigel and Mohammed just keep going, because it's time for the boys to step to the side and let the men do the work. Well, we're not in this for gold. We're in this for glory. We're in this for the glory of God. You can't beat that. You can't defeat that. Not for 2,000 years. You can't defeat it. I'm sick of it, Marcus. I'm absolutely sick of it. He said he was the question by the female presenter was put to him about Tommy Robinson and the movement. Yeah. I mean, why would you ever say that? We want apps, and the way that he cuts people off, and he's aware of his environment, so he has to talk quickly and he has to get his point across, and he does try to come across as quite domineering. Having met him with his height as well, I think that's his number one thing, is to come across as quite domineering. That would be my guess, without knowing the man, and he did. He didn't stop. He didn't think. He never thinks before, or there's never demonstrably the case that he's thinking before he speaks. He's just there ready to go. I've got the answer. I know best. And he didn't. He did exactly the same thing. So if your viewers that haven't seen it, go and check it out. You'll see him there. It's pre-programmed. It's already there. No, we want not. It wasn't even answering her question. No, we don't want anything to do with Tommy Robinson and that lot. But the way he said it and how he said it as well, but it wasn't really relevant to her point or to the question. He could have said anything. You can say anything. Same as when Steve Edgington said to Nigel about mass deportations. Yeah. Nigel could have said anything, even if it was halfway house and fairly liberal and a bit gutless. But no to mass deportations, and we don't want to know from Tommy Robinson and his lot. So what is there to say? Why would you ever say that about a patriot who, quite frankly, for the work he did exposing the grooming gang, should get a knighthood? Just that alone. Well, why would you ever say that about people who are patriotic people, who are street level activists, and who will turn up in numbers, and who will go to rallies, and who have families, and who have jobs? Why would you do that? But we know that Nigel doesn't like these people. He didn't like them at UKIP. He doesn't like them now. Nothing's changed in 8 years, guys, and it's not going to continue to change. It's time to jump on the team for the big win and realize that reform wants to be. I'll give you another. Right, they want to be establishment. I'll give you another example. Lately, the accusation is that Nigel was blocked from laying a wreath at the cenotaph. Right. So everyone was so happy with the 4.1 million votes, right? I mean, which one is it, guys? You're so happy. You've returned 5 MPs. You're going to take the country back. We're in crisis. They needed to have won. I mean, what's the point in not having a radical party? And so even if they had one, it might be better than the Tories, certainly be better than Labour. But we want to take our country back once and for all for good. And we want to put Christianity back into the heart of government. And we're patriots. So it's problematic, even if reform were there. But which one is it? They're saying that this is so great and the momentum's there and we're going forward. Everything that the reform says is wrong. And apparently, Nigel wasn't allowed to lay a wreath because of the logistics and the constitution and how many MPs. Yeah. So again, it's futile them being there. It's a vanity project. It's a vehicle for whoever to get to wherever. Which one is it, guys? I'm sorry to be no, I'm not sorry. I'm happy to be the bad guy, actually. But let's start asking some really basic and important questions about reform's utility.
Well, absolutely. And a great friend of ours, I've met him a couple of times, and he's a real gentleman, is Ben Habib. And Ben Habib has fallen out of favour with Nigel and reform. Well, Nigel is reform, let's face it, at the end of the day, even though they've democratised their party. Well, Nigel, if you're not democratising, if you're selecting the board and the panel, and they're going to push through whatever way that you want the wind to blow. But what are your thoughts on Ben Habib?
So Ben's always been very kind and courteous and generous as well. I've got a lot of time for Ben. Ben is also someone that I've approached. I have a list. He's on it or was on it, and he's made he's made his decision for now, and that disappoints me greatly. Those who are with me on the journey, that makes me very happy. Those who aren't, my question to them again, Ben. Everyone likes Ben. He's a good guy. He's been very good to me. I've got nothing but good things to say. It's not personal, but we're taking our country back in 5 years' time. So if you're still backing reform, if you're still team reform, and you are not high command, but you are VIP, high ranking, high level, if you're still backing them and they've said no to mass deportations, what is the difference between you and the Conservative Party then, especially if Kemi moves to the right?
Well, yeah, let's just finish up then on we've left the weakest and the most pusillanimous to last. And that's the Conservative election result. And we've done that for a reason, because we call a tick box Badenoch. And unfortunately, with the Conservative Party moving to quotas and installing them ESG, DEI diktats, I mean, it's coming from the Financial Control Authority, Nick. So you can't even have a business now unless you're running this crap. In our eyes, we believe in a meritocracy, as I'm sure you do. The best person should get the job. I mean, that's how business operates. Surely to God, you don't want to have a transgender pilot there just to reach a quota and they keep crashing into mountaintops. We just can't have it. But anyway, the question I'm going to put to you and the point I'm going to put to you is, sir, what are your views and thoughts on the Conservative leadership election results?
It's just the tone. The tone says it all. So I'll be no, I'm happy to talk about it, and it is necessary. So I've got a picture of Kemi at the World Economic Forum. I mean, I know a little bit about Tory politicians and Labour politicians and the Ed Davies of the world. Sure, why not? I'll play ball. So we're in crisis, and the British people deserve better. We've got to put Christianity back into the heart of government. We're so far fallen from grace. We've turned our backs on God. So it's not just Islamism, communism. It's not just globalism, but at local level as well, what our children are being taught in schools, the threat to life at street level due to uncontrolled mass immigration. So we've got to look at it at the macro and at the micro. Is Kemi going to shift the needle? Is Kemi the sort of leader we need and want? It's just the whole thing stinks. It would have stunk under Jenrick. It stinks under Kemi. The only person I ever backed was Suella. And obviously she doesn't get her chance now. So I can't talk intelligibly there, but I did back her as a possible with the Stones to deal with what's got to be done and what's got to be said going forward, because our people need to be re-motivated and re-inspired. They have lost hope. So you've got to start saying it as it is. So Kemi, picture at the World Economic Forum. It doesn't sit very well with me. I don't really like it. She was interviewed recently and she said, quote, it went fairly viral. It was about an 11-second clip saying, most young people don't support Tommy Robinson. She was asked a question about Tommy, and I think her response was, most young people don't support Tommy Robinson. Why would you say that? Prove it. How do you know that? You're a politician. You give a better answer than that. If you don't like the guy, say why, and let's have a conversation. But I think that's nonsense. And then she said, the gift that keeps on giving, we don't have two-tier judiciary in the UK. Okay. Tell that to Peter Lynch, God rest his soul.
Yeah.
Tell that to Tommy Robinson. Tell that to Lucy Connolly. Tell that to the Islamic Asian boys who just got off violent disorder by Islamist lawyer Ahmed Yaqub. You don't get off violent disorder. In unrest season, if you plead guilty to violent disorder, you are in Britain, you are going to prison for either 9 or 18 months. If it's more serious, 18, you're out in 9 out in 4.5. How dare she say that? She doesn't think we have two-tier judiciary in the UK. Again, let's move on from anything she said and done. She's part of the establishment. She's part of the Conservative Party. So what I'd like your viewers to think about is, do we ever forgive the Conservative Party and anyone moving towards establishment? Do we ever forgive? Do we judge the leader? Yeah, do we blame John Major? Do we blame Margaret Thatcher, or do we blame the party? Do we blame Tony Blair, or do we blame the party? Do we blame Liz Truss, or do we blame the party? Which is it? Do we blame the leader, or do we blame the party? Because at the moment, there's a vibe that Kemi, actually, Broadchurch Party, can move things to the right, and that actually we can forgive. How can we ever forgive the Conservative Party and all those Conservative branches throughout the councils, the areas and the districts that have been infiltrated by left-wing activists who block blue-blooded Conservatives from coming through and rising through? How can we forgive CCHQ, the main hub? You've got 30,000 in the blob, the civil service that's running this country. Absolute disgrace. Whole thing needs a chainsaw taken to it. Then you've got CCHQ, which people, for some bizarre reason, just forget about. Like, oh, if you put in a semi-centre-right leader, all the other moving parts and components of toxicity and disease-riddled entity, they just drift away, do they? And then you've got the globalist agenda and what she's actually said about fighting Islamism and communism. And for your viewers, feel free to go and do your research. Everything she says, whether it's on CRT, BLM, DIE, and ESG, where she's been fairly vocal and she gets a lot of praise for in right-wing certain patriotic circles, she's said what she said there, knowing with her optics that would have won her an awful lot of points. It doesn't necessarily mean that she means it. And also talking about transing kids and evil and polluting and corrupting the minds of our youth, etc., that isn't the same as addressing communism. That isn't the same as addressing globalism. That's not the same as addressing radical Islam or Islamism. And there simply isn't enough hard talk. So again, either I'm miles off and we shouldn't really be saying it, and we shouldn't be trying to inspire hope and future in our populace, in our voters, and we should all just not be saying a word and actually play this long game. And then once we're actually there, then we'll go and do it. Well, that's deception then, isn't it? I have to trust those politicians that they're going to do it when they get there. I want to hear them say it now, because if they don't say it, what have I got to vote for? At least if they betray us once they're there, well, we don't be held to account. They said they were going to do it. We trusted them, and now we've been betrayed. But they don't say it. So again, I simply can't be excited or inspired. Maybe she will change, but the facts say that, again, it is just very liberal in orientation. And again, it's a broad church, stand for everything, stand for nothing party, where anything right wing or blue blooded, actually conservative in both orientation and nature, is needlessly cut down. I'm not in any way, shape, or form inspired by anything they say or do, or Kemi's post either.
Yeah, I mean, amen to all of that, really. The pictures we put up as well of her at the World Economic Forum. She was actually on the Young Leadership program, handpicked by Klaus Schwab himself. And that's why we call her Tick Box Badenoch, because she does tick all the boxes. And the game is up, and you know it, and I know it. We've been inside these conservative circles. I've been in conservative meetings up here, and group tanks and think tanks, and they're not conservatives. They're Lib Dems at best, globalists at worst. And there are other people within that party that I wouldn't say too much about online, but there's a lot of disease in that party. And if it was an animal, it would be put out of its misery. And I think that's probably what we're seeing right now. And you are moving the famous Overton window, and Donald Trump's helping you, sir. And you can't have a better buddy than that. And we saw Calvin Robertson, his grace. We saw him there on stage with Donald Trump. That must have been a nice moment for you and UKIP.
Yeah, certainly. You know, we fully support Calvin and his endeavours, and I look forward to him coming home and standing. So yeah, it was lovely to see. Expect nothing less. He knows what he's doing. It's great, and I very much look forward to meeting Donald Trump myself and getting on stage at a MAGA conference myself. in our special relationship between the two countries in hopefully in the not too distant future.
Well, look, you're out there, you're on the street, you're an activist, and we salute you for that. We've seen how you operate, and there's only one, Nick Tenconi, when it comes to your activity and the cojones and the moxie and all that spirit that you take out onto the streets. So, but in the last minute or two, is there anything that you would like to say to your viewers, listeners, supporters, members, and to our herd immunity viewers?
Absolutely, and I appreciate the opportunity. We are taking our country back in 5 years' time. There's an awful lot of talk at the moment. There's something about that which is trending, which inspires and gets tongues wagging, and it replaces action. And that trend is the snap general election that's going to be called in the next 12 months. There is no guarantee of a snap general election. There is no guarantee that Labour won't course correct. There is no guarantee that we will not have to sit for 5 years in this state. We are taking our country back. Power isn't given, it has to be taken. And we are going to vote. The mechanism is that we are going to vote our way out of this. As God is my witness, we are taking our country back. That means political action. That means a total rejection of political indifference, of political apathy, of liberalism, of my vote doesn't mean anything. I'm just one man. I can't do anything. Starmer won with 9 million votes. It is 100% doable. Reform came second in an awful lot of constituencies with 4.1 million votes. Muslims have 25 of their Islamic brothers and sisters in parliament, and the Justice Secretary is Shabana Mahmood, a proud Muslim, often posing in hijab with Arabic writing behind her as part of the Islamic power flex. Don't tell me we can't vote our way out of this. Not only can we vote our way out of this, but we are going to vote our way out of this. So if you can support UKIP, jump on the website. It's on the Join Us tab. If you can't, but you want to support us, get in touch. But obviously, and most importantly, finally, I am recruiting community leaders. That means if you think you've got it in you, either as an organizer or as someone with people management skills, or to stand as a candidate in your area, now is the time to be getting in touch. Again, all doable through the Join Us function on the website. Regardless of whether you want to stand or if you want to lead teams, now is the time to be getting in touch with us and applying and then getting through vetting, and then we can start announcing your candidacy. The grasp is right there. Everyone needs to just reach out and grab it. And a warm welcome to all patriots at UKIP as well. There is no tomorrow. That has to be the mindset. We're taking our country back, but that means we have to do it. Duty and action must be our master. Stern duty and action must be our master. Thank you, Marcus.
Wow. Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, we always love having Nick Tenconi on. We've had him on 3 times now, and he is someone, him and UKIP, who we definitely recommend that you check out the work. And if you're looking for community activity and to get involved, we'll leave all the links to Nick and to UKIP. But all that remains for me to say, sir, is God bless you, Mr. Nick Tenconi, the leader of the United Kingdom Independent Party. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus.